And welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be going over my second game from the semifinal match that I played against Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. Now, we did not do a recap yesterday because in the first game of the match I played with the white pieces, it was a very boring draw in the Petrov defense. I didn't really feel that there was much that I could add in terms of a recap, so that's why there was no recap. However, we are doing a recap of the second game. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So obviously I was playing with the black pieces and Shaq at the white pieces. So definitely I was going to try to defend as best I could. So it starts D4, knight F6, C4, E6. Now I choose to mix it up here. Obviously in previous games I played D5 in round 1 against Levon Aronian, and additionally I played the King's Indian against Grigory Oparin in the third round of the qualifier stage. However, this time around I want to be a little bit more solid. So I play E6, knight F3, D5, knight C3, and I play bishop E7, which is of course the vaunted Queen's Gambit decline. So bishop F4 is played, I castle, E3, knight BD7, all very standard so far, C5, C6, and now in this position, B4, B6, and H4 is played here by Shaq. Now, again, this was a big surprise to me on the one hand because I wasn't really sure what sort of aggressive approach Shaq would choose. However, I have played this position twice before, so it did not come as a complete surprise. Now, the two previous times that I had this were both against Fabiano Caruana, and they occurred in the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, and I believe 2020, if I'm not mistaken. A5, A3 was played, and in both of those games, I chose to play this move, knight E4. Now, in those games, I continued knight E4 takes knight E5. Now, I'm just going to show you the games, or at least parts of the game, so you guys have a general understanding of what happened. So knight E5, bishop E5, queen D5, bishop E2, and I played bishop A6 in both of those games. And here, Fabiano played two different moves. In the first game of our mini match, he played this move castles here. And I believe I played bishop takes E2, queen takes E2. I traded on B4, traded on C5. I took on C5 here. Of course, if white takes back with the pawn, I can just take the bishop. So Fabiano played bishop takes G7, king takes G7, pawn takes bishop, and I played queen E5. Now, this position objectively is equal. However, due to the big time imbalance, because Fabiano surprised me with this preparation, I did go on to lose this game with the black pieces. Now, in that same match, we also had another game which went sorry, not castles. He played bishop takes A6, rook takes A6, he castled, and now I play this move rook F8, pawn takes pawn, rook takes bishop C7, rook A6, bishop A5, bishop takes H4, rook C1, and I played bishop E7. Now this game I would go on to draw, so I was vaguely familiar with this knight E4 move. Of course, I had not reviewed it before the game, but I thought to myself, why do I want to repeat this variation when I know there's another line that I've looked at in the past, and also Shakhriyar almost certainly is prepared for knight E4, whereas the move that I play in the game with knight G4 is definitely a new move. I do not believe it has been played before. So the purpose behind playing this knight G4 move is pretty straightforward. I want to play E5 and strike at the center here. As you can tell, this chain is held up. It's connect 4 in the center and also connect 3. The idea is to play E5, put extra pressure. Of course, if I go E5 here, white just gladly takes, and he's up a pawn. So the idea behind knight G4 is that now, after a move like bishop E2, I can play this move pawn to E5. Now, it's worth noting that bishop E2 did occur in the game, and here I thought for a couple of minutes. Now, in this position, I knew in my memory that pawn to E5 was the best move here. However, after thinking for quite a bit, I decided to play this move H5. Now, the reason I play this H5 move, which looks very weird, is primarily because I knew that in certain variations with knight H4, H5 was played, and during the game when I played this move, I didn't see any reason that it looked like it was losing or a huge blunder, and so I thought, you know what, why not play it? And at the very least, Shakhriyar is going to be out of his preparation now, so we're going to play a game of two humans instead of me trying to beat my head against an engine. So I play H5, Shaq plays B5, I go bishop B7. I do not take this pawn on B5 here because then white has a crushing move C6, and after knight F6, white can play the move C7, queen E8, and I think bishop takes B5, bishop D7. I'm going to guess rook B1 here. Actually, rook B1 hangs a pawn. Maybe queen B3 here even. And white has this pass pawn, protected pass pawn on C7, and it's very, very hard for black to play. So instead I go bishop B7. He takes on B6, I take back with the queen, and now he castles, and now I play this move rook Fc8. Now, all these moves are pretty straightforward. However, rook Fc8 is a little bit of a surprising move probably to the people who are watching this video. They probably think, well, why not rook AC8? The reason I went rook Fc8 is because since I played this H5 move to support the knight on G4, I was actually quite worried about my king side, and weirdly enough, even though I take the rook, which is a defender, away from the king side, I have this nice idea to put the knight on f8. So say knight g5, knight f8 ever occurs here, you'll notice that even if the queen gets to c2 or d3, there's never a checkmate pattern on h7. So I feel like the knight on f8 is very, very well placed. So that's why I go with this f rook to c8, Shaq takes, and now I had a tough decision. I took with the bishop in the game. Now in retrospect, it was definitely the right decision because of the position I got. However, I came very close to capturing with the queen here because now it's kind of tricky. White has this idea with bishop b5, and after queen c3, bishop d7, rook d8, white can actually force a draw with rook a1, rook c1, queen takes a3, rook a1, queen c3, rook a1, and the game will end in a draw. But I felt that here, bishop takes c6 also makes sense because, again, as I alluded to by playing rook f c8, I want to put this knight on f8 here, and then the bishop also squares like e8 or d7 potentially as well to support the king side, especially to support the pawn on f7 from e8. So here knight g5 is played by Shaq, and now I played the great move knight f8. Now clearly this move took Shaq by surprise as he did not react very well to this move. Now this looks like a very strange move on first glance. You think, well, white can just take the pawn. But now I have the very devilish move bishop to d7. And you'll notice that here knight takes d5 is not a move because after pawn takes, the knight guards the bishop. And now the knight's just under attack. So if white plays a move like rook a c1, for example, here, there are a couple ways that I'm doing very well. But just to illustrate the very basic one here, I can go queen to b2. And now if white goes like knight to e2, I go pawn to e5, creating the classic fossil here, and I'm going to be winning material. And if white goes queen h5 to hit f7, I can go g6, attack the queen, and after queen h6, I can very simply take the bishop here. And again, you see there's really no checkmate. The knight guards everything, and therefore white is completely lost. So I suspect that this move took Shaq by surprise, and now he did not respond correctly. In this position, the computer says that after a4, white still keeps a small advantage because after bishop e8, there's knight b5, and white has this great outpost. So perhaps white can still claim something, although I'm a little bit suspicious about the evaluation because after f6, I have bishop g6, maybe knight g6, a lot of pressure here. I think black should be okay. So instead, Shaq plays this move bishop d3, and now I go bishop to e8. Again, very logical move. I support the base of the pawn chain. So now with the knight on f8 guarding h7 and the bishop on e8 guarding f7, now I have actually quite a bit of play on the queen side. The rook on c8 is optimally placed on the open file. Bishop on e7 targets a3 as well as the knight on g5. And additionally, I can always go f6 to kick the knight out of g5 because the knight on f8 guards the h7 and e6 squares. So here Shaq plays rook b1. I go queen d8, and now he plays this move knight a4. Now here I go rook a7. The reason I do this is because, of course, let's just say I play a random move like g6. White has knight to b6, forking the two rooks. Actually, bishop a3 would be the better example, knight b6. So I have to do something. Now, I could take the knight on a4, but after queen takes a4 here, white now has the bishop pair and control the open b file, and the queen is also very nicely placed on a4. So I don't really like what's happening here, and if I can avoid it, I'd rather just move a rook to a7 because now the bishop is still keeping an eye on this knight, and the other bishop is also targeting the pawn on a3. So now Shaq plays queen b3, and now I play the very important move bishop d6. As you'll notice here, if I could put these rooks on the open files, like say I could stack the two rooks on the c files, I'd be doing very well, or even the b file, but this bishop on f4 covers both c7 and b8. So by going bishop d6, I try to eliminate this bishop so that I can now create the double stack on the c file, and black is completely equalized. So Shaq trades, and now he plays this move knight f3. I go rook a c7, create the double stack here. Very, very nice position again. This knight on g4 is now actually quite problematic, so I'm threatening a mate on h2 potentially, and the two towers on c7 and c8 also are very well placed. So here Shaq plays knight c5, and this was a big mistake here. He actually should have played this move queen b6, and after queen takes a3, knight c5, black is nothing better than to play knight d7. We trade. And in this position, white can play a move like bishop a6, rook c6, queen a7, and I actually have to make a draw here. I have nothing better than this. However, Shaq, after a bit of a think, decides to play this move knight c5. Now, this kind of took me by surprise because initially I thought I had this move e5, and I thought I was doing very, very well here. The reason being that if white takes with the knight, for example, we trade, and then I take the knight on c5, and I'm doing very, very well. And if white takes with the pawn, of course, that loses the knight. And if, let's just say, white plays a move like bishop e2, for example, I can now go e4 here, removing the defender. If knight d2, I have checkmate in one. And if knight e5, same problem, we trade, and I win the knight on c5. So I was starting to feel very optimistic for a second. However, unfortunately, after I play e5, White is a very nice move, bishop f5 here. And when I go e4, he can now play bishop takes c8, rook takes c8, and the in-between move, not knight e5, because after takes, you would still lose the knight. But the very quiet in-between move, knight to b7, attacking the queen. And after queen c7, just knight to e5, trade, queen e5. But after a move like rook fd1, white should simply be winning here. So again, I spent a little bit of time here. I suspect that the about 7 to 8 minutes I used on this move e5 probably were the single biggest reason I did not press more in this game or get better winning chances. So I play this move knight d7, obviously the natural move. We trade, and now Shak goes a4. I play rook c3, queen d1, and this is sort of a fateful moment where I think I used maybe 3 or 4 minutes to play this move bishop takes a4. Now, oddly enough, the computer says that after g6, black is actually much better here because, of course, she has a classic flying V formation. Who doesn't like the flying V? It's the best formation in hockey. And beyond that as well, white still has this problem with this checkmate, and the knight covers the e5. So now after white plays a move like bishop to b5, for example, I can now go rook c2. And there's a lot of pressure here towards f2 and e3. And after, say, white trades on d7, for example, say rook b5 here, now I can go for this nasty tactic, knight takes f2, rook c1, and this would be completely winning for black. So this was a very critical moment in the game. Now, the reason that I think I didn't play this, or at least as I recall during the game, was because, first of all, I thought that in all these positions, let's just say I go king g7 here, I thought that in the worst case scenario, at some point, white will be able to play a move like knight e5 here, and it should lead to a simplified ending where it should be a draw. However, the computer says that after trades, if I play a move like rook 2 to c5, I'm actually doing very well, or even queen c7, creating the classic triple stack. Black should be quite a bit better, if not, in fact, winning, oddly enough. So the reason I didn't do this was because I didn't really see this idea, and I always assumed there was some knight e5 idea, which would simplify it into a drawn endgame. So instead, I take on a4. Queen a4 is played. I take queen a5, rook dc3. Now, the reason that this is different than the previous line is now there are two open files, and there's no actual weakness. So in the previous variation here, these pawns are on the board, so a4 is actually a serious weakness, where in this position, without the weakness on the a file, it's just even material, and white can actually defend the weaknesses on f2, e3, and d4. So queen a7 is played. I go rook c6 here. Rook b2, great move, by the way. If rook b7, I have rook a6, potentially trapping the queen. So rook b2, we repeat. And now here I play rook a6, queen b7, and I try to keep some hope alive with rook a8 to go rook b8, say rook e1. Rook a b8 would just be winning material here. But of course, Shak does not make any blunders. Now he goes rook fb1, triple stacking his own on the b file. I go queen c7, essentially admitting that I can no longer win the game. It was very disappointing for me to have to play this move. I really didn't want to play it. I could have maybe tried g6, but again, at the very least, after a move like g3, there's just nothing happening here. Both sides have the flying V formation, and the game should end in a draw here. So I play queen c7. We trade knight h2, knight h6. Of course, if I trade, this is just a draw. So knight h6, knight f3, f6, trying to cut off the knight from jumping to e5 or g5 here. Knight e1 is played. Go rook a3, stop this knight d3 to c5 or to f4 potentially. Both squares, of course, are very, very dangerous. g3 is played, rook c3, rook b3, we trade, I go rook c1, king f1, and now I play this move g5. Quite simply, if white can actually develop here, let's just say king e2, rook a1, if white gets this knight to d3, there actually are some very serious long-term problems potentially with knight f4, rook b7, and all these pawns are a little bit weak in this position here for black. So I have to be a little bit careful. So I play, so in this position, I play g5, rook b8 is played, and now here I play the move king to g7, rook to b7, king to g6, and now Shak trades. Goes king e2 to break the pin, of course, rook a1, knight d3, and now I play rook a2 check. And here Shak makes a very important decision. He plays rook b2. If Shak had gone king to f3, for example, after this move knight g4, it starts to get a little bit tricky here because the knight on g4 covers e5, and it's also targeting f2. And let's just say white plays rook b8. After rook d2, rook b3, king f5, black might have some winning chances here. And in fact, computer says black is actually winning. So here Shak plays rook b2, and after rook b2 there really is nothing left. We trade the rooks. I go h4 to create the outside passed pawn. We trade, and after king f3 I agree to a draw here. The main reason I agreed to a draw is because after king f5 white can go king to g2. Not knight d3, by the way, because if white plays knight d3, now after knight f7, king g2, knight g5, there definitely are some tricks here. Still should be a draw, but maybe there are some chances But if in this position, white just goes king g2 here to go king h3, king g4, f3, this is obviously an easy draw. And so there's really nothing left. So that's why in this position, after king to f3, Shaq offered a draw, and I decided to take the draw. Obviously, a little bit disappointing because I had that one moment back on move number 26 where I could have played g6. And as the computer gets more depth, it actually thinks black is much better, if not close to winning. So definitely I'm a little bit disappointed that I didn't see that idea or that I didn't use enough time at that critical moment because I did have 20 minutes more on the clock there. But alas, it does happen. I'm still human. I'm not a computer at the end of the day. So the game ends in a draw, which means that we now go to tiebreakers tomorrow. We'll be playing 2 games, I believe, at 15 minutes with 10-second increment. If those games are, if we're even after those 2 games, say it's 2 draws, then we'll play some blitz after that. So it's going to be a fun day. Looking forward to the tiebreaker. Obviously, with the candidates being my main focus now, my goal primarily has been just to be solid and get through this tournament, do my best. And so we'll see what happens in the rapid games. Hopefully I'll be able to do a recap of them regardless of the result. But at any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. I know I took a break from game 1 yesterday, but we will be doing more recaps, and I hope you've enjoyed all of them throughout this tournament, this Fide Grand Prix here in Berlin, and I will see all of you guys very, very soon. Hope you enjoy it. Have a great day.
First question to Shach. Were you satisfied with the opening stage today?
It looks very interesting. I think it looks slightly better for white. Maybe it's better position after his move h5. But I miss his after knight g5, knight f8 is very strong move, very tricky and very strong move. I miss knight f8. After knight f8, I think Hikaru start to play for advantage. I mean, I played not very well. Maybe it's after slightly better for black. But okay, I mean, it's not normal game. It's because I lose my advantage, and maybe Hikaru lose his advantage. And after it was okay, draw position.
Hikaru, your comments? Did you feel you were better at a certain point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it seems like maybe I'm better, but it's all sort of, I think, just visual. I mean, material is always even, so even though it looks like I have the right setup of pieces, I don't think so. I mean, it felt like somehow at the queen and rooks, maybe I can do something, but I thought this queen a7, rook b7 was very strong. Yeah, so I mean, it's a pretty normal result.
Yeah, I don't know. The computer says after move a4 of white that black is like has 1 point advantage. Did it feel like that? Even though what? I don't know, with some moves like a4 after a4.
Yeah, but what's the move?
Rook c3, I mean,
Queen d1 and then what?
Queen d1 and just slowly, g6,
just slowly, yeah,
something like that.
g6.
No, but there's g6, bishop b5.
Yeah, king g7. Yeah, maybe it's. I mean,
and
okay.
just sit and wait. Okay.
I mean, maybe you need to save these pawns. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, maybe.
But it was not so deep computer, so I was just asking, how did it feel for you?
I think, but okay, you can always take on d7, go rook b5.
No, but I have read this one. I mean, when I play this a4, I think is of course it is only problems if he. But after take a4, of course, I think is very close to draw. But yeah, I mean, with g6, king g7, yeah, and I don't know what to do because, okay, it looks so, again, draw, yeah, I mean, it's also, if I will play good, I mean, it will be draw, but I need to play very accurate.
And who was playing for the kind of victory at the end, or it was just drawish position which you were playing?
It was just drawish, but I mean, at one point I wanted to play on, then Shakhriyar I wanted to play on, but okay, nobody had anything special.
Yeah, it's just.
Hikaru, I mean, did you know that with this draw you guaranteed yourself the first place in the Grand Prix series? So now you actually the winner of the series, not the event, but the series.
There's no bonus prize, so it doesn't mean anything. I mean, and in past Grand Prix there actually were prizes for overall, like first, second, third, but now there are no prizes. So okay.
So you don't care.
I mean, who cares?
Yeah. Yesterday you played in this King's Arena event, and is it actually allowed to play Blitz and Rapid while you have classical chess still happening in the tournament?
What do you mean?
I mean, is it fine? I mean, what do you think? Is it a good idea?
You mean it's a good idea? No, because I mean, of course anyone can do this. I don't know. I mean, I drew yesterday very quickly, so why not? And yeah, I mean, of course, when you do that, sometimes preparation maybe suffers the next day, but fortunately, Shakhriyar played something that I mean, Fabiano played against me online a few times, so I was pretty familiar with it.
Have you ever done this before? I mean, if we consider 2 years.
Yeah, of course. No, I did this in Zagreb, I think, when there was a Grand Chess Tour in 2019. I think I played maybe Title Tuesday. I played one of these tournaments for sure. So yeah, but also there I was doing very badly. So when you're doing badly, you do these things, but normally not when you're doing well. Okay, why not?
What about you? What do you think? Is it fine to play blitz games while you have the classical chess still happening, classical tournament?
But, okay, I mean, normally I'm not playing too much in online tournaments, and also I played on special tournaments. I mean, if offer some tournaments, but if not, no. I mean, normally when I am at home, I'm not playing online. Why I need to play during the tournament? I mean, for me, it's absolutely different. Okay, Hikaru is absolutely different, of course. I mean, no, I'm not playing.
So for tomorrow's match, what do you think? How many games have you played in Rapid? Do you remember the score on blitz?
Okay, I mean, we've played a lot. I don't know how many, but I mean, in St. Louis alone, I mean, it's probably at least like 30 or 40 games. So I mean, we've played a lot.
I think it's okay. In Blitz and Rapid, Hikaru crashed me. I mean, this is absolutely normal. I think it's online Rapid and Blitz is in big plus. I think in classical I am in plus something, and all this I mean online Rapid and Blitz is in big advantage. That's normal, yeah. I mean, it's number one in Blitz and or number, I mean, Rapid or Blitz also. I mean, it's absolutely normal, but okay, we will try, eh?
Yep.
Why not? But I think it will be more interesting.
And also, Shak, you were the world champion, of course, in Blitz, I think.
I was world champion in Rapid, yeah, when I was young, but now I'm not young. For this reason, it's different, but it's okay. I mean, I think it's not big difference for Hikaru and for me also. We just will enjoy from Rapid and Blitz.
We'll enjoy definitely too. Thank you so much for your comments.